Hi, good afternoon, everybody. So you got me, Tim Imholt, and Bill Sylvie over there, otherwise known as the Dungeon Delver. By the way, if you don't subscribe to him, you need to do that. He knows everything about RPGs that there ever was, and a bunch of things most people forgot. Say hi, Bill.
Tim. Hi, Bill. Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me on, man.
So there's been a lot of discussion about the OGL, the Creative Commons license, and all this other stuff going around. And last year, as we all remember, Hasbro or Wizards of the Coast kind of hurt themselves wearing golf shoes. Well, we won't say exactly what they did wearing golf shoes, but they did some bad things while wearing golf shoes with the open gaming license, where they were just going to revoke it and say, nope, can't do it anymore. Big companies, being big companies, will sometimes do stuff like that without thinking, like, oh yeah, we're big, we can do what we want, right? Well, the community banded together, led a lot by that guy over there and others, and got together and just complained and yelled and wrote in and emailed and recorded YouTube videos and went on social media. And Hasbro eventually relented and said, nope, we're going to sweep it in Creative Commons, keep the OGL. Fine. We're moving on. Moving on. I've worked for enough big companies. I'm like, that's not the end of this. There's something else coming down the pipeline. And I've been trying to figure out for a
Oh,
year what it is. And I think I figured it out. So it's the first time I've ever explained it to anybody. So I have Bill to come on so I can explain it to Bill. So I'm going to share my screen here, Bill, so you can see what I'm looking at. So
can't wait to see it.
back when you and I started playing Dungeons and Dragons, the adventure modules were held together with basically a couple of staples and some hope. And they
Right.
largely looked like this right here. And this will become
Yes.
important in a second, right? And
Very handy, easily portable. And if you didn't have a DM screen, you could put that map up there to hide your notes.
exactly, it was fantastic. And a kid with it, I was the kid with a paper route who could actually afford this stuff. Uh,
Exactly. They cost maybe twice what a comic book would set you back in 1982.
give or take, right? So that was that. This is what Hasbro's putting out for adventure modules now, and I've got a couple of them. I've got Curse of Strahd, Icewind Dale, because I know you're a big fan of Greyhawk. But this one, gets into things with where you've got go down to the real description here. You get to go into places where Drizzt and others were kind of hanging out, and some of the stuff from the original series of books, right? And you
Right.
could get it on Amazon hardcover for $27.60. Its list price is $50. Local gaming store will probably have it for 40 or something, but you can get it for 27 on Amazon. And
Mhm.
that hit me as interesting, because I went and looked at. Let's go look at the the everything that the Wizards RPG team has out there, and I was like, huh, they're all sitting $20 to $30. They're not off the charts crazy expensive anymore. They're not $50. They're not $100. So that led me to kind of think for a minute. We had this one, okay, one of my favorite adventure modules. It was out of print, couldn't get it. Goodman Games came along and put this one together. Okay.
Yes, I've got one of those. Fantastic book.
Fantastic book. I love it. It's got the original thing in it. It's got a lot of history in it. It's got some new Errol Otis artwork in it. I love this thing. Okay. So that led me to, okay, well, let's go look around at what else is going on in the Dungeons and Dragons community. And let's just take a little look around. So right here, this one's coming up. Quest from the Infinite Staircase, pre-order for digital for $30. You can get the hard copy eventually. What's in here? Oh, look, there's Expedition to Barrier Peaks again, but you also get these other 5 classic adventures.
Hmm.
Okay, so these books are now going for 20 to $30 over on Amazon. We already talked about that. That one's going to eventually be that same price. It'll probably come out at 50 and eventually hit 20 to $30 someplace. Meaning the $50 I got for one adventure right here, these guys can no longer compete with Hasbro Wizards of the Coast. I think they left the Creative Commons and OGL stuff in place because they have a plan. They're going to come through and re-release all these things to do all the stuff the gaming community has been doing, but do it for less. This is how Amazon put essentially everybody in the world out of business, because there used to be Circuit City and Kmart and a lot of other choices. Now there aren't. Amazon
Hmm.
came along and undercut prices forever. Now you basically got sort of Amazon and a few local store options, and not even all the malls you used to have. I think what Hasbro's doing is saying, fine, we'll leave the license in place. We don't care. Compete with us on price because we're bigger than you. we can go off and get pricing you can't get because we can pre-order tens of thousands. You can pre-order tens. So
Mhm.
great. You got to sell your adventure module at $100. We can sell ours at $30 and we can make money and you can't. Ha ha. Too bad. So sad. Sorry. You see where I'm going with that?
I see where you're going with that, and I do have some thoughts on that, but please continue.
That's, I think what they're doing is going the Amazon route. I think they're planning on re-releasing everything that was classic D&D. All the stuff that Goodman Games was trying to do, all the stuff everybody else has been trying to re-put back out and sort of modify for fifth edition. I think they're getting in that same game and they're about to try to undercut everybody who's in the OGL Creative Commons licensing area and say, okay, great, you guys can do that, but we're going to do it too. Because you have a non-exclusive license. That language in that license is very specific. It says you can do it, but if you're not exclusive, it means we can do it too. And when we throw our hat in that same ring you guys have been in, your business just died because most consumers, some hardcore gamers will look at this and go, I trust these guys. I like Arrow Otis. I love what they've done. I love the effort. I want to support local businesses. By and large, 99% of the population ain't going to do that, right? They're just going to buy the cheap one because they're buying it for their son, daughter, whatever, themselves, and they don't have a lot of money. So they're going the cheap route. And I get that. I've absolutely been there most of my life. But I think what Hasbro is going the other way. They're just saying, great, we'll leave the license there, try to compete with us. We'll put you out of business in the next 3 years.
And this follows, and this makes perfect sense because they have Wizards of the Coast has Microsoft people at the top, and Microsoft since 1981, Tim, Microsoft's entire business model is predicated on extend, embrace, exterminate. Now, Tim probably well knows this. I would be surprised if you didn't, Tim. I'm certainly aware of this because, my other secret identity is I'm a horrible computer geek, especially when it comes to history. The big dog on the block back in the 1990s for graphics was Silicon Graphics, was SGI.
Yep.
All the kids wanted to grow up and get themselves an Indigo or an Indie workstation or an Onyx or an O2 or something like that and have an SGI. And Microsoft saw what SGI was doing with graphics and said, let's partner with you. Microsoft is going to invest in OGL. And while they were investing in OGL, they were creating DirectX. OGL, I'm sorry.
SGN.
Uh, um,
Silicon Graphics.
Silicon Graphics, but while they were investing in GL, OpenGL, it's the Open Graphics Library, Microsoft was piling mindshare into DirectX. So by the time we started seeing on the PC desktop, because in from like 1992 to 1997, the price of a desktop PC just imploded. And now Open Gaming, Open Graphics Library was being used for gaming. Here comes SGI saying, "Hey, we've got OpenGL," and Microsoft said, "Yeah, we've got DirectX for Windows." And it was at that point that SGI knew that they had been betrayed. Microsoft extended, embraced, and exterminated. SGI sputtered on for a few more years, but now they're like a division, I think, of Rackable or something like that.
They're a
They did
small
the
group of
same.
guys on the second floor in some office building someplace, right?
Yeah, yeah. You're not going to go buy some fancy workstation from them like you could back in the. And so this follows that this is what this is what Hasbro Wizards of the Coast is doing. It makes perfect sense that they would just move their business model over and do something like this and say to Joe Goodman, "We'd be happy to work with you and publish a revamped Expedition of the Barrier Peaks with the original, and we'll get Errol in there. You have our permission. You have our blessing. Go ahead and do that." And then they turn around and they do this. Now, the bulwark, the saving grace is that I do not think Wizards of the Coast gives enough of a damn to get down to the boutique level and republish the actual adventures, because this book has the 1E AD&D adventure in it. If you
Yes.
don't give, if
Yeah,
you don't give
it has
it,
this.
yeah,
It has
if
this
you
guy
don't
right
give
here.
it, yeah, if you don't give a damn about 5e, that's cool. That's a hardback copy of S3.
It's got a
Uh,
page by page version of this thing right here.
yes. Same with the Temple of Elemental Evil. I've got this. I don't know if you guys can, no, you guys can't see that one, but this car battery size monstrosity from Goodman has 2 volumes. It's got a historical Temple of Elemental Evil, and it's got a 5e Temple of Elemental Evil.
Mm-hmm.
The Wizards of the Coast of today is very, very different from the Wizards of the Coast of 2014. That Wizards of the Coast, they published this Dungeons of Dread, which is S1, S2, S3, and S4. There's no 5e in this. It is literally just reproductions. But this is from 10 years ago.
Yep.
That Wizards of the Coast no longer exists. The Wizards of the Coast now doesn't care about me. They don't care about grognards, except insofar as we draw attention to their constant missteps. They're not going to do something like this again. So
And
you're going to
that's
get
now out of
tails,
print, right? You're not going to get any more of those.
right? Unless you buy a pod copy on drive-through. So Wizards of the Coast uh, will continue to publish this stuff, and they, like, there are D&D adventures that are evergreen, Tim, and I don't know if I'd mentioned this to you, and I know a lot of my audience will know, but maybe your audience doesn't. Tomb of Horrors has existed and been published for every version of Dungeons and Dragons. Wizards
Yeah.
of the Coast did it for 3rd edition. They did it. TSR did a Return to the Tomb of Horrors for 2nd edition. Wizards of the Coast did a version for 3rd edition. They did a version for 4th edition. 5th edition has Tomb of Annihilation, which entails Tomb of Horrors. So
Yeah.
they can go back to that well over and over. But as far as coming back and doing something like this or something like what Goodman's doing, they don't care because they don't have to, because guys like me are not going to be around too much longer.
Yeah,
I mean, as corporate plans go.
I wouldn't put it past them. They're not too long before you're going to start to see these come back. The
Oh
original.
yeah, yeah. I think if they can push halfway hard, they'll definitely start getting Dragonlance back. I believe now. I'm sure somebody in the comments will correct me on this, but I believe they actually had that licensed to a small company in the 2000s. I think it was White Wolf.
I saw one. Somebody came up with a copy they got in a Gary Con for like the first 6 or something of them together. I saw it float by on Twitter, and yes, I called it Twitter. I don't care.
Yeah, it's Twitter.
I can't bring myself to say I X'd. It just doesn't make any sense. But somebody saw it on, somebody picked it up at GaryCon, which had the first 6 in it. But still, remember that the OGL or the Creative Commons says non-exclusive. So yes, you have the right to do it, but since it's non-exclusive, Hasbro still retains that right to go do it themselves anyway. Right. So let's say somebody does do 1 through 6 and they've invested the time, money, and effort to put that out, and they sell 100 copies, and Hasbro goes, okay, cool. We did it too. Ours is half the price of yours. It's the same original artwork. Yeah, because we own it anyway. What the hell? Let's go do it. Right. And they throw one together and throw it out. Right.
Well,
So
the caveat I was just going to say that the caveat is, of course, you can't use product identity even with the Creative Commons. Like Bill Sylvie, could not publish for sale a module and say it's set in Greyhawk, it's near the Duchy of Ernst and involves meeting Mordenkainen. Wizards of the Coast would park the Death Star over my house. Creative Commons be damned.
exactly.
So yeah, I definitely think you're right. I think they are absolutely in extend, embrace, exterminate mode now. And I think they looked at the popularity of what Goodman Games was doing with the revisited sets, and I think we're probably
like this one.
going to see more and more of that.
Like you can actually, this is Goodman Games knocked that out of the park on this thing. You could just about run this adventure without any other reference books. I mean, this is that level good.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, that's, of course, I've told you and my audience knows, that's how I learned to play D&D. I just had a copy of B2. I didn't have a D&D rule book. It's that good. It's that complete. And you can do it with that. But I definitely think the days of boutique products, like I can't believe it's been 25 years. And that just blows my mind. But 25 years ago, Wizards of the Coast, still working with TSR as an impressum, released this. This has got a copy of B2. It's got a copy of Ravenloft. It's got
Wow.
G1 to 3, and it's got the Holmes basic D&D rules in it.
Wow.
They basically released a playable D&D set of classic D&D. The people responsible for this, the people responsible for 2014's Dungeons of Dread and so on, are gone. The people that are there now are 90s Microsoft.
I
And
couldn't agree with you.
yeah,
All right. Well, we'll just leave it there. Leave your comment below. I'm sure somebody will disagree with one or the two of us because, you know, it's the internet. Somebody's going to disagree somewhere. And if somebody from Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro would like to talk to either one of us, please reach out. We would both love that.
yeah, I've burned my bridges with Hasbro.
Okay. I'll be very polite and nice and only ask questions and actually give you time to answer them. I'll even let you read the questions ahead of time. But anyway, all right, everybody have a great day. I'm sure this OGL Creative Commons license thing is not over. I just get this creepy feeling it's coming back down the pipeline again. So
Definitely is.
otherwise, where the heck did Baldur's Gate go? Those guys got into a negotiation about something and that went away. Critical Role, who for like Critical Role, they're not really playing Dungeons and Dragons. They're putting on a stage show that looks like Dungeons and Dragons, but it they kind of were playing. But it Critical Role, got sort of kicked them to the curb and said no more. So I think there's something going on behind the scenes. Otherwise, they wouldn't be parting ways with these people who have been largely successful and brought a lot of attention to them. So there's something going on there somewhere. But we'll get to it sooner or later. So everybody have a great afternoon. And Bill, looking forward to your live stream tonight.
All right, man. Thank you. Peace.
Thanks.